It will now be together with a very special guest. I'm happy to see him because, as a matter of fact, not only are we here in the German-speaking area, the MALEvolution, Mannsein is the biggest European men's conference we've heard, which is even cooler. We have allies in Northern Europe, in Copenhagen. There we have Manifesto. Manifesto is our strongest partner organization since 2018. One man established it together with some others. His name is Paul Lloyd Robson. He is joining us now. I'm happy to welcome him. I will switch to English in a few seconds because it's quite funny to announce him in the German language. But since there are some people sitting in the live interpretation here, Paul has a very colorful life. He was born in South Africa. He is now living in Scandinavia. He has 2 sons. He studied political science. He worked 9 years with Microsoft, but he also taught scuba diving, rock climbing. His background is also in Tantra, but now he is an Orthodox Christian. Moreover, he also established the men's organization Manifesto, and he organizes the European men's meeting, and we are presented there. We are always happy to take up a new energy out there in Denmark, in the woods, where cool things happen each year in August. Again, it will happen this year in August. You can get information about the European men's meeting. It will happen live, not in the virtual sphere. I'll switch over to Paul. I think he's going to mention it.
How did this sound being introduced in German like that?
I picked up a couple of key words, so yeah, it was fun. And, yeah, definitely recognized a little bit, but fun. Yeah, interesting.
Well, I raved about you, and I'm really glad that you're here. You've been our strongest ally since 2018, and it's been beautiful co-creating with you, with EMG and our 2 men's organizations, Manifesto and the MALEvolution. I'll be joining you later for a little Q&A with some audience questions. And for now, I leave the floor to you. Here's Paul Lloyd Robson about the future of men. Welcome.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much. It's an honor to be able to be here. I'm going to share my screen here, so bear with me, and let me see if I can get that to work. Oh no, wait, yeah, sorry. I want to present a view. Yeah, good. Okay. So an online presentation like this, and it's been my 40th birthday yesterday. So they say that 40 is like this number that is a kind of time of preparation for the real test. So I don't know if that's coming now or if it's coming later or something like that. But thanks for the opportunity, John, to come on here. It's a real privilege to be able to come and talk to you guys and share what we've been doing in Manifesto with Mannsein 2021 and really taking the next steps in what has been an incredibly valuable and beautiful collaboration, I think, between us so far. So really exciting to see where things are going. So yeah, the theme of this conference, guys, is masculinity in today's world. And this is a manifesto for the future of men. So how is it going with men and masculinity? Some people might say pretty bad, pretty shit. Some will say pretty good. During the last two days, you guys have been experiencing, I would guess, the value and the strength and the inspiration that you can get from being in a space just with men. And if it's anything like what I've experienced when I've done that, then that's pretty fantastic and amazing. I'm going to remember to move on the slides here. At the same time, I think we should say that it seems like there's a need right now, like there's never been a need before, like as a historical moment, for us to come together and to talk about men and masculinity. So that's what we're doing here, where you guys have been engaging with this the entire weekend. And as this is getting to the close, I'm hoping that I can give you some of the ideas that we're doing and the way we're looking at it as well. And then I really want to be, my whole goal with this thing is one thing really, and that's to call all of the men who are involved here to action. And that action is really a men's group. And if you're in a men's group, then do something for someone else than yourselves in your men's group. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the close. Before I start, I just want to have two little things. One is, as John mentioned, we'll have a little chat and questions if anybody has any at the end. So please write down your questions that pop up while I'm speaking. You can put them into the chat and we'll take them up. And then the other thing is, if I can see some of you on my video right now on my screen, it's really nice. So if you do have your video, then please switch it on if you're able to do that, so we can see each other. It's really nice instead of just talking to kind of like blank screens or something like that. Great to see. I don't know if it's really warm in Germany at the moment, but great to see the guys with their shirts off and enjoying the heat. Or maybe you've just been doing some really intense workshops together. Yeah. So yeah, what I'm going to be doing on this talk is to talk about Manifesto, first of all, as an organization. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we started, because it's often the roots of things that tells us something about their essence and their qualities. Then I'm going to tell about the European Men's Gathering. And that's for me, that's in the future, and predicting the future very far out can be difficult. But in this August, we have a pretty clear idea of what we're going to be doing at the European Men's Gathering this year. So I'm going to take you guys through a little journey through what that's going to be like. And then we'll see how much time we have to dive into a little bit about our philosophy of men's work that we're looking at from Manifesto's angle. So those are the three things that we want to do. And then we're going to finish off with that call to action, as I mentioned. But I want to tell you, first of all, about how we started in Manifesto. So this picture was taken on a summer day in Copenhagen back in probably about 2015. And we are 4 guys sitting there. You can see I was even a little bit more beardy there. I think that was when I was starting my beard project for the first time. Those of you who attended Manside last year will recognize the bald gentleman with the slightly sly smile at the back. That's Alexander Bard. He is a philosopher. He's been a music producer, something of a celebrity in Sweden. Very, very inspiring, if not somewhat entertaining man as well, Alexander. And then the rather fuzzy-haired guy is a guy called Buster Rodvik. He's a professional dancer. And then Thomas Hamlerøck is the man closest to the corner. And we sat at this cafe, actually. I found this picture. I was really happy that I found it for this talk. And this is where we first decided there's a turmoil around manhood and masculinity around us right now. And we don't even feel clear ourselves about what are the answers to the challenges that we have. None of us really completely understand it. So back in 2016, we invited basically the most inspiring men in our networks that we knew to come to what we called a men's research weekend. We held it first in Stockholm, then we did it again in Copenhagen. And the idea with it was to kind of try and bring together the paradoxes and hold them together in a space and not have to join them together necessarily, but to kind of let them be there and see what happens if we were able to meet. And part of this idea with the paradoxes was the idea of mind work and body work. So we split our events and what we're doing. We didn't really make much of a plan or a program of what we're going to do, but we did mind work and we did body work together. And we had one idea, and that was about how do we take responsibility as men? That was basically our question. What does it mean to be a man, and how do we take responsibility as men? And we had a lot of discussions, a lot of things happened, but it was really just the most transformational weekends for us in our lives that had ever happened. And we found that just coming together and being men together found that we could grow together in our inspiration, our direction, and take that with us into our relationships with everyone else that we're having in our society as well. So we had some really big thinkers there that came along, and we wrote this manifest, put it out online. And before long, we had a whole lot of people who were saying like, hey, we also want to come and meet with you guys. And so 2017, we organized what was for the first Nordic men's gathering. And at the same time as this, there was a guy. I just heard. I can hear my echo of it's coming through somewhere. Okay, it's gone now. So Jordan Peterson at this time was at the other side of the Atlantic, kind of calling men to a new making their beds basically standard. No, I'm still hearing my echo. I think there's a guy called Mark Oliver Krieger I can see who is echoing. No, now he's muted. Thanks. So yeah, it seemed like there was men from all different backgrounds who were finding that there was something to rally around, especially in this Jordan Peterson guy. And so this was a big part of our starting point, actually, coming from a very diverse background as well, though. And yeah, the Nordic Men's Gathering led to a European Men's Gathering. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we met John actually as well, because I think it was in 2018 for the first time that we went down to Berlin with a delegation from Manifesto. And then later on that year, then John came up with his team and came and joined us at the European Men's Gathering. And the first thing that I will say I noticed about John was just his sense of humility and service. This was the guy who was running the biggest men's conference in Europe, and still he was able to take an extra shift in dishwashing when some of our volunteers didn't show up. And he wasn't looking for like some kind of platform where people would give him attention and be looking at him, but he was really looking for a band of brothers who could make an impact and that would stand by his side in the long term. And his focus was building a shared positive vision for collaboration for the men's movement in Europe. He wasn't afraid to say the things that he disagreed about, but he was really focused on that positive vision. And I think that's something that we've been able to build on very powerfully as we've been working more and more closely together. And so John, I'm proud to be standing by your side today and know that you're standing by mine when I need you as well. And I think what has brought us together is really a shared belief that when ordinary men come together, we can do unordinary things. And the goals that we're aiming for are higher than ourselves as individuals as well. So that's been, a really great work too. And I think we both have this thing of like mind work and body work bringing us together as well. So yeah, the German team has been a bigger and bigger part of the European Men's Gathering every year. And John this year is going to be leading our ritual team, which we're doing some pretty crazy rituals. And I'll be going a little bit more into that. Because yeah, I want to tell you a little bit about the European Men's Gathering now. Basically the European Men's Gathering Manifesto is quite a few different things, but that's our flagship event. It's the one opportunity we have every year to come together, to expand our vision of where we're going and to deepen our collaboration. So this is very much where we kind of feel out and experiment with how we're going to be, what we think is the edge of men's work as we're developing it here in Europe. We get people far off into the countryside and where it's difficult to leave, so that and then we create a container which can hold us together. So yeah, what are we trying to do? The vision of the European Men's Gathering is to create a dynamic and living community of engaged men. And we're focused on contribution. We're trying to connect the online digital community to physical in-person reality. And we're comprised of men of many different belief systems and backgrounds. Importantly, we're intergenerational. So we have men from our 20s to our 70s, and we come together and we speak directly about our differences. We're not afraid of offending each other, but we have the energy and the willingness to act in a way that creates value for ourselves and for others. So we try and keep that above. And I'd also say that we believe that truth and authority don't just stem from ourselves. We're always building on what came before us as well. So we're respectful and grateful to our fathers' fathers, and all of our forefathers. We're not trying to be like some stiff and reactive thing or overly conservative. We want to be a dynamic community that's continually adapting to society, but it's building, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're building further on that which has come before us as well. I've been forgetting my slides here, of course. So European Men's Gathering, here it is. So the theme this year is the death of the patriarchs. That's what we're trying to do. And you can see the theme of it is a little bit dark. And this reflects really what we see as a mainstream narrative in society today, probably inspired a lot by feminism, about smashing the patriarchy. And this is also about rejecting authority and rejecting kind of structure and remaking society in a new image somehow. And this narrative has a lot of momentum, and it has a lot of strength. And in some ways, it's like a train that's kind of heading towards a brick wall. And in Manifesto, we're not trying to stop this train. We're more interested in what's going to happen as this train is heading into the wall as well. And that's why we want to enact and play out the death of the patriarchs. But we're not planning to stop there. What we're basically going to do is we're going to have the narrative structure of the event is going to be a death, a burial, and a resurrection. So we're going to get a small taste of death, of what it's like, and we're going to be able to re-see and reinterpret some of the events of our lives, and we're going to get a new map of the territory. That's basically what we're trying to do. So I'm going to try and take you guys through the event, the flow of it, and give you a little foretaste of that journey of what it's going to be like. And one thing that I was just thinking about is, I read a study recently about Olympic swimmers, where they took two groups of swimmers and they got them to, one group, they got them to train like 7 days a week, and there was 2 practices a week. And then the other group, they trained half as much, and the other half of the time they had to visualize that they were training. And at the end of I think it was 3 months or something like that, they then measured the performance of these guys. And what they saw is that the guys who'd done the visualization, they were able to perform just as well as the guys who trained the whole time. But there was actually fewer injuries as well. So visualization is a powerful thing. And as I tell this story now, I want to invite you, if you feel like it, you can also imagine going on the journey with me into this European men's gathering happening this year. And this will be a little foretaste of that event. So the journey will start on a Thursday in August in Denmark. It's at a retreat center in Thy, which is right next to the biggest national park in the Danish countryside. And the 140 attendees would have traveled from about 25 different countries to get there. English is going to be the shared language that we all speak. And the men will be welcomed, and we start by agreeing on the container and the conditions for our being together. It'll be mutual assumptions of agreement that can help us to have a shared trust and be able to let go into the experience of what's going to be coming. So we'll be talking about open and direct communication. We have confidentiality, respect, and we also take responsibility as men for our experience. This is a gathering of men. Many of them work with men, other men as business leaders, as teachers, as coaches, as facilitators or therapists. But here, none of that matters. We're just here as men. Once this is done, then each man will be placed into a core team or a little small tribe with a facilitator and the 10 men who live geographically closest to him, but with as much as possible with different generations of men. And this will be the primary vehicle for navigating through the weekend and also making sense of the journey. It'll be the place where he'll be able to have the most obvious connection point for when he gets home to ensure that he has the best integration after the event as well. So already on that first Thursday evening, then the participants will start sharing the stories of their lives. And what we have a specific focus on this year is looking at the story that each man is living in his life and interpreting the symbolic elements of that story that it's in. So they'll be asked to see the story and to identify who is the main character, who is the hero of the story, and what content or context is that hero in. They'll be supported also then in discovering and revealing their own sacred desire in that story. What moves them? What is their call to adventure? What is it that they can strive for in their life, that they know, okay, if I just reach that thing, what's the beauty that I have to save, or the treasure, the grail that I have to reach, that if I attain that, then everything else will be okay. And then we'll go to bed to that first night having a sense of being called on a new adventure. So if the Thursday then is about constructing this strong container and setting the scene for the story, then the Friday is going to be going very fully and strongly into it and testing not just the strength of the container, but also the mental, emotional, and physical strength of every man who's attending. We found that before a man can be civilized, he needs to be in touch with his warrior core, with the dangerous and darker parts of himself. He needs to know what he's capable of. As Jordan Peterson has said, if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. So from the 70-year-old university professors or pensionists that are there to the sportsmen in their 20s, we're going to be testing every single man to the maximum amount that we can and that he wants to go to. So it's a training of a warrior. Humans, we resort automatically to a fear response when we're in pressure situations. It can be fight, flight, or freeze. And especially when we're facing direct, uncompromising reality, when we're not used to that, then we go into this fear response. And a man who lives in comfort all of his life, he won't know his warrior spirit or his power. And so when a situation requires strength, then he'll either fight in an ineffectual or an emotional manner, or he'll flee in cowardliness, or he'll simply freeze. So we want men to know their power and to bring it under conscious control, not to stop feeling fear, but to act with clarity of positive purpose through fear. So that'll be the focus on the Friday. Each man will identify the tyrant in his own life. It'll be the unjust authority that is holding him back from his sacred desire. He'll see the malevolent, selfish dragon sitting on his hoarded treasure. The anger that is normally kept under the surface will rise up and be felt and expressed. The container is designed to hold the space for this and enable men to be witnessed by other men. Our facilitators ensure that every man is challenged. Tribal loyalty and competition will play out against each other. There'll be a bear and a bull clan. There'll be a light king and a dark king. There might be food and drink that could be scarce during the day. Betrayal. There'll be a mob and a scapegoat. Tribal effigies will be constructed and burnt to the ground. And each man will feel his edge and be able to establish his boundaries. Finally, on that Friday, the tyrannical patriarchs will be overthrown, they'll be stoned and burnt to make way for the new. And so, as we stand there on that cusp, we'll pause. We'll stop up and we'll be there and we'll notice. We broke down a wall, and what's that like? We achieved what we had set out to do. We saw something that we hated and we destroyed it. And it was a success and we can celebrate. And as we stand there in silence and in rest, we can look at each other. We'll look at ourselves. We'll look towards our own hearts and towards our loved ones. And we'll notice. Because the story has reached a turning point and a new map of the territory has been revealed. We broke down a wall, and what's that like? As we enter the Saturday, our core teams will again make the forum for making sense of the occurrences of the day before. We'll continue to unfold our personal stories, each man identifying and sharing the concrete support, and now seeing also a symbolic or divine helper in his life. Who are our allies that can ensure that we're recruiting all the help that we can get in reaching towards the sacred purpose that we have. We no longer have a tyrant to point towards as the source of our pain and suffering. And each man sees and experiences in a real way how it's his own choices which determine his path through life. There's no more space for stories of victimhood. We're all victims of this gift called life, and we'll all die, and we'll all suffer pain in order to get there. Steve Jobs has a quote. He says, "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda of an entire generation to come." So the question is, what kind of a story do we want to tell with our life? Are we living in a comedy, in a tragedy, or are we willing to shoulder the responsibility of being the hero of at least our own story, if not yet that of others? And more importantly, are we willing to do what it takes to become that hero, or do we want it to be served on a silver platter for us, like the high chair tyrant boy? Collectively, how do we as men ensure that we're creating the best possible framework for moving ourselves forward, upwards, and forwards? Each man will have to need to consider if he can find forgiveness inside himself and for himself. He'll have to weigh and consider the price that needs to be paid to move forward. There's no shortcuts. There are no easy ways out. Reality has to be faced. Alone, most of us wouldn't have the courage to do it. But standing with a tribe of brothers, we see clearly not only how chickening out would cause us to lose face in front of all the other men, but how the man standing at your side is counting on you to lift your part, and how staying true and holding to your integrity and to your path so that you can strengthen him and hold true so he can do his part as well. So on the Saturday evening, we'll bury that which we buried on the Friday evening. We'll see more clearly than before. The tyrannical father will be recognized for what he represented. It's a projection of the darkness of our own heart onto the world around us. We can withdraw the projections back to ourselves. We can stop being afraid of all the shadows around us and realize that they're merely shadows cast from the masks we place over our own heart. The real shadow that needs to be harnessed lives within and is a part of ourselves. So having put our fathers to rest, we're able to fully experience a true rebirth, a resurrection of soul, mind, and body. From the desolation of a culture of wokeism, where the highest virtue is signaling your niceness and your mystic goodiness to the world through your choice of climate-friendly cafe lattes and the nihilism that follows the rejection of that, we're now ready to step out into a new world. A new world where we're no longer the victims of circumstances beyond our control, but rather the synergistic mediators between the chaos of raw existence and the wisdom that we received. And most importantly, we're no longer the atomized individual standing alone as a solitary tree in the desert, but an integrated part of the forest of existence and community, finding my contributive role in enjoying the shade, shelter, and nourishment of my brothers and sisters around me. So that's the story of the New European Men's Gathering this year and the state that we want to send the men home with. It's a state of empowerment and inspiration, but not only that, we also want to send them home with concrete connections with the men living near their geography and actually also a concrete plan of action for engaging in men's work. And as I said, that's about starting a men's group and bringing in other members of their community to be spreading this mission like ripples in the water. So by connecting men and engaging them in men's work, our ambition actually in Manifesto, the way we see it, is no less than to disrupt the therapy industry, which we see, put it bluntly, as having largely abandoned and failed men and boys as well. So the guy coming after me today, Dr. Robert Glover, has started a new way of doing this kind of work. And he spawned a group or a kind of wave of these No More Mr. Nice Guy teachers. But these guys are doing group work as well. And that's really something that we see has a large value as well. So if we look at masculinity, and I think some ways that masculinity and the therapy industry have an uneasy relationship with each other. A good definition of masculinity for me is the characters and traits and values that men love getting from other men. And the explicit goal of many therapists and the American Psychological Association today is to make men less masculine, especially in the sense of classical masculinity. We're told that for men to be okay, they need to be more like women. They should become feminized and nice. There are good therapists out there, and there's also men who will continue to need to go to therapy. But for the broad range of men, I think that the solution to our challenges will be found from doing other things than just sitting with a therapist. And I'm saying that as a trained psychotherapist myself, amongst the long list of things that John mentioned that I do. So yeah, in many ways, I think modern psychotherapy has become a product of an individualized and fragmented society of men who are separated from their tribe and therefore weak. No one benefits from weak men. Everyone benefits from strong men. We need more strong men. We need men who stand strongest when we'll be able to take our place as a contributing part of a team or of a community. So we see joint action in the world through men's work as a fantastic path right now for the betterment of men. By committing to shared goals with others and working towards them to meet difficulties and approaches and opportunities for growth, and by building strong relationships required for joint action, we create the network of support that we need to get through the tough times and face our shadows. Making stuff happen in the world is not easy. Men's work is a space where we can ensure that men are gathered together around an explicitly positive vision and purpose, and where we can try, fail, learn from our failures, and try again. And finally, I'll say men's work is not a goal in itself, but our communities benefit from being diverse and inclusive, and certainly from including men and women. So it's really what we see as the current political climate, and also just the radical change that our society has gone through in the roles between men and women, that we see the value of men for a while and just sometimes coming apart for a little while, and to meet other men and to be strengthened with each other in our masculinity, to be able to call each other to account, to inspire each other, to challenge each other, to face our fears, and to come back to our partners, to our work, and to our communities and our society with renewed strength, focus, and integrity. So that's why we're members in men's groups. That's why we're here to do men's work. That's why we're going to the European Men's Gathering this August. And that's why I'm looking forward to seeing Mansign team, as well as many of you guys also coming along to the European Men's Gathering. So now I'm getting to the third part of my talk. This was the European Men's Gathering. And now I'm going to try and talk a little bit about the framework for men's work that we've been looking at. Because, yeah, as I mentioned, I'm this kind of like a do everything guy in the middle. I try and connect people. I have the privilege to work with a lot of better public speakers and workshop facilitators and body workers and that kind of thing than myself. But I'm trying to bring all these things together. And right from the beginning that we started with Manifesto, we saw that there was kind of these three main threads of the men's movement, where we had men's rights activists, we had a pro-feminist kind of group of men, and then we had what's called the mythopoetic men's movement. And so, yeah, those of you who are a little bit more intellectual probably appreciate or might appreciate this, this part, and the more experiential guys might find this a little bit more heady. But what we really think is like, it's important that men's work is mind work and it's body work, and we need to have both. And we need to get to know this kind of like territory of experience. But we also, if we get a map, then we also need to get a map, understand the map. And we also need to develop basic map reading skills as men as well. So what I've done is I've published a blog post about this, and I'm going to try and give a very simple version of it to you guys. But we've tried to create a system for understanding these three strands of the men's movement. And this is the product of many, many discussions. It's more, it's an allegory. So I know you German guys are like great engineers and very good at creating like these very fixed systems. I love German cars. I don't know about, yeah, I would never buy a French car or an Italian car. I'd always just buy a German car, I think. So I love the German systems. This is a little bit more of a French system, I guess, or something like that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I want to, what we've been trying to do in Manifesto, and I've been forgetting my slides again and just talking to you guys. So this was the pictures that we're taking it through for the European Men's Gathering, sorry. Is we've been trying to develop a philosophy in going back to the roots of things. And you know, there's so much that come before us. And when we started this work, then I would say we were just a group of guys who thought like, oh yeah, we can do this. And then as we've gone more and more into it, you know, you start realizing how much people have gone before and how ideas keep on repeating. And so I fell over this idea from Plato, who is one of the two gentlemen in the center of the image here, who wrote a series of dialogues. There's one called Phaedrus, where he has Socrates walking in a garden or walking out in nature with a student and talking about the nature of the soul. And what he does is he compares the soul of the human to a charioteer and a chariot with two horses, a dark horse and a light horse. And so as I looked at this, I was like, oh, there's something that I can use here just to say something about the individual man, and then also to say something about these three branches of the men's movement. So that's what I'm going to try and put forward to you guys kind of lightly here. And then you can always read more about it as well. But this is something that we're looking at and trying to develop as well as a way of bringing some different ideas together. So we have this chariot. We have the dark horse by Plato is the desires of the man. It's the sexual desire. It's the desire for food and drink and pleasure. The light horse is the quest for glory, for fame, and for recognition. The horses are what provides energy to the chariot and can drive it up to heaven if the two horses are harnessed and are pulling the chariot. And the charioteer is the force of reason. It's the human ability to think, to reflect, to understand, and to gain insight. So it's the human insight that has to then harness and align these powerful forces to kind of to get them to fly. And the idea is that all parts of this chariot are good and are necessary for the chariot to be able to move forward. You can't just cut them off or something like that, but we need to align them all. And this is, I think, an integrated part of a lot of our entry into men's work and seeing man for what he is. And this is a very old idea. It's very ingrained in our thinking. So you can find this idea from Plato, but all the way through Western thinking, all the way up to major thinkers like Freud, who based his, the ego, the superego, and the ID on this idea as well, and kind of corresponding. It goes in Freud and Carl Jung and Lacan and these things. So it tells us something about I'm going to go back here. It tells us something about the individual human being. But what I'm trying to do now is use this as a symbol to say something larger about the societal level. Sorry, I'm just finding my point in the. I'm just finding my place again. Yeah. So basically, most of us will recognize the different elements in these three elements of this chariot and the charioteer. And some of us have a very prominent dark horse. Some of us will have a prominent light horse, and some of us have a prominent charioteer. Some of us kind of cycle between all three of them in, kind of uncontrolled, where one is pulling a different direction, then we go with the other one or something like that. So it's about creating this alignment. But my feeling is that the men's movement and somehow also represents is represented by this as well. And so when we look at the symbols of things, then it puts us more into a touch with the fundamental nature as well. So the symbolism is kind of like this aha experience that you can have when someone explains something to you and the world kind of fits into place. So when we're overwhelmed with chaos, then we need a higher organizing principle in order to make things make sense again. And this is what stories do really for us. So we're trying to tell stories to each other a lot of the time in the men's movements, and stories use symbols to convey very complex meaning in simple terms. So they can contain far more information than just a description can. We can take like the Apple logo, for example. Think of everything that's associated with the Apple logo, and it's worth billions of dollars. Or if you just take like the little simple drawing of a little crown of a king and what that symbolizes, then it brings a lot in. So I've been looking a little bit at this word symbol, this is just a little shout out as well to a channel that I've been following a lot called The Symbolic World. So the symbol comes from the Greek word symbolos, and this originally came from the word for where two rivers flow together and met each other. So it was like kind of like the flowing of, water is this force of chaos or the feminine or something like that. And when it come together in one, then that was the symbolos. So later on, then symbolos just came to be that which brings together. And if you look at the opposite of symbolos in Greek, then it is diabolos. So diabolos is that which divides. And of course, this means basically evil or the devil or diabolical or something like that in English as well. So this is like a pointer for us somehow that's buried in our language that shows like this idea of, human striving towards the bringing together of opposites of water and of chaos into one somehow as well, against the diabolos, which is pulling things apart somehow. It's still in our language the way we speak today. So symbolism has been an important part of the men's movement from the very beginning. The mythopoetic men's movement, mythopoetic is basically the myth-making parts of the men's movement as well. What I did when I was looking at this, then I looked at this book by a fairly prominent pro-feminist author called Michael Kimmel. He was the president or the spokesperson of the National Association of Men Against Sexism. And it's a really interesting book because it's one of the most, I think, honest and serious attempts to look at a communication across two branches of the men's movement, basically from a pro-feminist perspective to the mythopoetic men's movement. And as a pro-feminist, then Kimmel is very honest in the book about his feeling of rejection by kind of normal men and the mythopoetic men. He notices how kind of normal, middle-class, hardworking men are all flocking to these workshops by the mythopoetic movement, but not really connecting with him and what he was offering. And he sees the kind of mythopoetic movement as this kind of like earthy, animalistic men. He talks about the first workshop that he attends, where these men are kind of like running around on all fours and bumping into each other and acting very animal-like in some way. And he's kind of like really unable to go into this. And in the end of his writing, then he kind of like takes a distance from it. He says the men of the mythopoetic movement face a choice. They either should connect themselves to the women's movement, to the gay and the lesbian movement, or they need to retreat in defensive anger. So in some way, kind of like creating a separation, say either you go my way or you don't as well. And then when he talks about the men's rights activist movement, Kimmel, then he's even more kind of aggressively creating a barrier and basically sees the MRAs as a dying breed of white supremacists and fascists who need to be replaced by the new pro-feminist man. So this is kind of like the image that I was presented with these different branches of the men's movement. And so when I've been looking at this, then the way I've kind of mapped it is that I see the dark horse of the chariot is the earthly desired sexuality. It's the experiential approach, and this is very much what we have in the mythopoetic movement. It reconnects men to the inner wild man and gives inspiration and creative energy for engaging more fully in the sacredness of primal life in tribal rituals and in sacred spaces. The mythopoetics have a broad sex appeal, but they lack a vision for society. They lack a political project and a broader mission than just their interests of their own tribe some of the time. So some of the projects that we've seen, I think especially the Mankind Project, has really done a fantastic job in setting up a large movement, and they're doing they've really had a great network. And I know especially the Scandinavian Mankind Project group are also kind of really looking at creating this broader vision as well and bringing some of the other aspects. And so that kind of vision for society, that's really this light horse of the allegory. And this is what I really see the men's rights activists kind of very focused on and very strong in this light horse. So they have this spirit of determination and honor. They know what society needs to look like. They have a very strong sense of justice. And unfortunately, they don't get along very well with the pro-feminists. So there's a battle that needs to be fought. And they kind of battle for control of the chariots, which is basically what happens also in Plato's allegory. But because anger is also what's associated by Plato with this light horse, then these men also have a susceptibility to be labeled as angry white men. And that's what the feminists very often do. And so they're unable to really get a kind of broader societal contact. A lot of the time it's guys who've been in hard custody battles for their children with ex-wives that are in this men's rights activists, and they have a hard time recruiting a broader sense of support for their cause. So last of all, we have the charioteer and his kind of steering of the chariot. And the charioteer, as I said, it's this reasoning facility. And in our society, then it's really the academia and the university that is the kind of knowledge producing, it's their role to be able to harness and understand the world and what's happening in it. They're the source of knowledge and wisdom. And what we see today, and I think largely in universities, is a pro-feminist approach. Very, very much. So the kind of charioteer today in society, and I think, Warren Fowler is a good example of someone who's kind of bridged this gap. But largely we see academia is very much a pro-feminist kind of institution. And that's what's guiding the broad societal narrative, at least, as far as this reasoning ability is concerned. So, yeah, I hope that was a good attempt at explaining my thing. There is an article. If you go to manifestocore.com/blog, then you can see this article if you thought it was interesting. But basically, it doesn't give a complete solution except the need for understanding and meeting and creating spaces for coming together. And I think that's been something that you guys have done this weekend. We've had a person, JJ Bola, from a kind of more pro-feminist perspective, and Warren Farrell, who has been on this maybe an academic and also a men's rights activist perspective, coming and sharing and found common ground, and there's been a meeting of ideas here on this online conference, and I think in Mansign, when we're meeting physically as well, then it's also important to do this in an embodied way as well. And so you guys can hear I have my biases, I have my specific perspective. I'm more orientated towards some of these areas of this chariot than others, and each of us are like that. But it's just so important to realize that, well, we need that integration. We did bringing things together in order to be able to do this properly. So yeah, this is again my slow slides, but this is I love this picture for the men's movement. When I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, this is what's happening at the moment. It's a bit of a chaos, but we're kind of, there is a heading in the same direction. There's hope in the future. Some people might be falling sometimes, some people might get trampling. There's a lot of excitement, but I think it's a beautiful image of what it is that's happening in many ways as well. So this is really what we're hoping can happen. I hope that the images are obviously a little bit stereotypical, but we're trying to come together. And yeah, that's it. I think I was going to talk a little bit about some of the more fundamental aspects of the men's movement. Looking at these ideas and basically very quickly, I'll just mention, so this wasn't planned from the beginning, but the Manifesto logo is the circle, and then it has a hierarchy. And so we've been looking at, well, okay, if we have a men's movement, then there's, and we all believe it's valuable and good to come together as men, then how do we define, like, what do we believe is valuable and good to have inside our movement? And what is it that we said is the outside of the movement? How do we determine what is at the top of the hierarchy if we have a hierarchy of values? Because we can't, we need something to gather around. And then if we have these two paths at the hierarchy, we have a left hand and a right hand, we have opposing perspectives, we have a dialectical process that's happening as well. So these are some of the ideas and thoughts that we're working with. So yeah, but I think I'm going to stop my share here and say we have just about 12 minutes left. And guys, yeah, I think, if you've had a great experience this weekend and you've been inspired, we're going to go home and we're going to tell our friends, we're going to tell our girlfriends, our wives, or our partners about it. We might even tell our mothers or our fathers, might even give a call to our father and have a chat with him that's been needing to be had, or a brother or something like that, and find some peace and some kind of connection. We'll probably be riding a bit of a testosterone high as we leave here, and that's going to be great for a couple of weeks. But if we don't take that and do something with it, then all of this can really risk being not leading anywhere, because it's great to have a good experience, but what we're really looking for is action. There's a saying, action changes everything. And so what I want to leave you guys with is, if you're in a men's group, or if you're not in a men's group, then find some men living close to you and start trying a men's group. We have a great manual on our website that you can download for free. And there's lots of other documents about running men's groups and different programs that you can follow as well. There's online men's groups to get inspiration also. And if you have a men's group, then I just want to challenge you with this one thing. It was a challenge that I gave to my men's group 6 years ago that destroyed my initial men's group, actually, which was in some ways a great thing, because we went off and did great things in different groups after that as well. But the challenge was, guys, can we do one project together, as small as possible, that would give some value to some other people than ourselves? And that was something that really made us realize, like, oh yeah, this isn't just about sitting and, we can sit and talk about our feelings, and that's great. And we can, sit there and go around in circles, but, get to know each other better and get to know ourselves better. But this idea of, like, actually doing something that can give some value to someone else than ourselves, that's basically what led to me and John meeting, and to everything else that's happened since then as well. So yeah, that's it, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just going to jump in right here and not waste any time for as long, making use of the time that we will have you. Thank you for this tour de force of a presentation with so much content. I felt reminded a little bit of Warren Farrell's load of information yesterday. We'll see what's going on tonight when Dr. Robert Glover's joining us. But I wanted to throw out that key question out to you, or like something that I've wanted to throw out, because that's something why we met or why we're co-creating. So unifying these branches of the men's movement, what do you think is like a key element in doing so? Because, we obviously sort of putting our best effort forward here, with that bringing different perspectives to the table and let everybody be heard for as long as there's a value set of being respectful with each other. What do you think that unifying force will be?
Yeah, well, the unifying force, I would say, is talking directly about what is the unifying force. So, we have sometimes a tendency to be very polite and nice to each other. And what we found is when we gather just as men, then we can actually hold a lot of disagreements, because as we, try and do things together, we find that, okay, actually, we do have different perspectives and different ways of doing things. And so being able to talk about the difficult questions, what's at the top of the hierarchy somehow. And tolerance is certainly a very high priority for a lot of people today. So a men's movement that has tolerance and inclusion is very, very high. But if we just have tolerance and inclusion as the only point at the top of the hierarchy, then at the end of the day, then we have to take everything in, including all the bad stuff as well. So that's at least an idea that we need to have some kind of discernment and delimitation and agree, like some things are better than others. We do have hierarchies. And those are some of the hard questions, I think, that need to be taken about what's actually up there as we get closer together. And so I think direct communication is probably been a key tool, at least, to move towards that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's actually interesting that there was quite a bit of talk of hierarchies this weekend. And it was actually more an agreement of saying, like, hierarchies is not the answer, like in certain places. And when for example, Warren Farrell talked about hierarchies, it was about like men's groups, for example, they need to be egalitarian. Everybody needs to be sort of have the same rights. Otherwise they don't work. If somebody is too dominant, they always fall apart. Mm-hmm. So there's like, I guess, places for hierarchies and places where we need to look into them because they haven't served us. So I find it really interesting. What I hear you saying is it's a hierarchy of values then? Is it like what's important, and of course there's tolerance can be a value, but there's also the paradox of tolerance. But like in general, is it a hierarchy of values that we still need?
Yeah, well, certainly, I think we need to be able to discern what are the values that we're gathered around, and there's no way to create movement if you don't have a hierarchy, because if everything is equal, then you might as well just stay where you are. So we need to say something is better than something else to want to move towards it. So men's movement, it's not a men's stillness, it's a men's movement, right? And so we believe that there's a vision that we need to be able to move towards. And so it's not a hierarchy of human beings, certainly, and it's not based on just authority or position or role. And that's probably, I think, when you talk about being in a men's group, then that's that importance. So for me, the hierarchies, and one of the biggest focus for me has been the top of the hierarchy has been contribution. So, men who contribute are recognized in that hierarchy. And the thing about contribution is we need everybody to contribute, and everybody has a piece of the puzzle. And in a men's group, then, we have so many different talents. And this is the way that the tribe worked as well, is that everybody had a time when they had to step in, and no tribe can just, function just on the leader's kind of efforts, right? But we need all of the additions of all the different talents that are there as well. So yeah, it's about, bringing these things together as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so much in the words too, right? Because you could also call this a priority list, and people would feel much less triggered on certain parts of the discussion. I find that highly interesting because, like you said earlier, it's certainly not about roles and people so much. You were talking about the boyish tyrant earlier. It's really looking into what we prioritize or put up there, if you will, higher in the hierarchy. I'm just trying to unpack all these also miscommunications that are constantly out there with battles that was also a big one this year at the conference. There's battles that are just so fucking useless. Like this like, say, feminist and anti-feminist battle, or whatever you want to call it, or being triggered by the word patriarchy in all kinds of directions and stuff. So where do we focus our energies on the stuff that really counts, right? And what is our leading force that sort of guides us through this mess? And
bringing together voices that we disagree with, right? Like consciously doing that. So you can hear, like, I when I came to Denmark, I studied political science at university and fully was immersed in like a feminist perspective. And so maybe part of my approach today is a reaction against that. And that's why I can sometimes be a little bit harsher in using words like hierarchy and things like that. But I value so much, and I work hard to bring in my pro-feminist friends and colleagues and create a platform for them to be able to speak about their perspectives. And I just get so much clearer about my own position when I am able to be challenged by them as well. So yeah, that's I think a core aspect is like listening to words that challenge us and using that as an opportunity to go deeper into our own understanding and to consider it more as well. And see, like, we need each other. We need the pro-feminists. We need, they have such an important part of this, compassion and empathy, that we'll never get anywhere without them. If we're just going to be the two horses, then, they would just have like, oh yeah, we want to get laid and we want to be famous, right? That's not going to go anywhere. We need those reasoning elements that can, that's what really sets the direction of going to heaven as well. So, it's just so important with the variation in perspectives that we can have, but being honest about our own perspective. When I was writing the speech, it's so difficult to find that balance between, like, okay, I'm trying to be the gathering figure that can bring people together, but I'm also just a man. and so I'm like, okay, well, let's try and be honest about that. And then I can thank you that, John, you can kind of skillfully ask me the right questions that I can get to say, like, oh yeah, well, I do, I do see that as well, my own, because we have biases, all of us, and there's so much to learn from just coming together and spending time talking to each other on these online forums, and then even more so, being in a men's group over a long period of time and talking to the same guys that I disagree with time and time again, and learning from journeying alongside each other as well in a very concrete way.
Fantastic. So there was like this, our sort of underlying theme is like the future of men. And in a way, we're talking about the future of men every time. But this is the way we phrased it this year. And pretty much every speaker got that question. It's like, what do we really need for that future to be brighter? Or what are some core elements for their future? So what does a man have, and be it value systems or behavior patterns, what is it that, like if you had to name three from the top of your head that I feel really strong there? I think you partially did that, but like, what is it that the man of the future will need?
Well, I'll have to go with my chariots allegory, but I'm also going to try and give another answer to that as well. So, I think a man needs wisdom and knowledge and discernment. He needs to have a mind that understands the roots of where he's coming from, and other men who have thought about these things before. And then he needs to be connected to his sexuality and his desires and understand those and be able to harness them. And he also needs bravery and courage and daring, like it's super scary to be vulnerable, so we need to be able to put ourselves out there and be weak and be vulnerable and risk being hurt and things like that as well. So that's for me, and and then bringing that together in that allegory. But one of the conversations I've been having a lot in Manifesto as well is, if this hierarchy, like, what is the one thing that we could put there? And the final thing that I've got the closest to, and there's this is a very long conversation, but it's silence, actually, the silence of being that can be there. And I think that's the final thing. We've just had in Manifesto, we have a theme every month, and we just had prayer and meditation as our theme for last month, and that just came through so strongly. Like at the end of the day, life is a paradox, but when we meet there in that calm silence, then that's something that can ground us as well.